Powered by Riverside FM.
Looking to explore new frontiers of entertainment, American director and Star Wars creator George Lucas founded a new computer division in 1979, a spin-off of the production company that bore his name. They would go on to be known as LucasArts, one of the brightest stars in PC games development. Initially unable to build titles in a galaxy far, far away due to a licensing agreement with Atari, this new business instead embraced new intellectual property, leveraging the might of Lucas's film credentials to produce works a cut above the competition. No strangers to playing in other genres, LucasArts would eventually take a shot at the burgeoning FPS genre, following the enormous success of Doom. With Atari's grip on the Star Wars license loosened, the team put together an ambitious FPS game set in this universe, and built an equally ambitious engine to power it. Unfortunately, they'd only get two uses out of it, as very soon the developers shifted along with the rest of the industry to polygonal rendering. This other game was not set in the world of Jedis or X-Wings, but instead harkened back to an era of Hollywood that predated George Lucas, one whose frontier justice had an indelible influence on George's work nevertheless. In some respects, this game would do likewise. Although it ran on older technology, it would be forward-looking in its approach. Where LucasArts have since gone on to be defined by their adventure games and Star Wars titles, this shooter represents a side of the company few have seen, but is well representative of the creativity that defined them, and the rebellious spirit of their earliest work. On this episode of Bullet Time, we head back to the Old West with LucasArts' 1997 shooter, Outlaws. Kind of a weird end of the... Was it sort of like one of those things that when they stepped down and it's like, it's not you, it's me, or...
Right, exactly. Yeah, I had to have him sit me down and tell me that he was leaving for other reasons. It was sad though, because he did a lot of work, and he was very helpful. I don't know. Yeah, but I'll see him. I'll see him tomorrow.
Nice. Well, is the weather looking good for it, or?
I don't know. Probably.
Actually, I don't even know why I assumed that it was an outdoor wedding. I think it's because all the ones I've been to are outdoor, and so I just go, "Oh, this must be an outdoor thing. That's how it works." But
I don't think they were going to take the chance. No, not in October.
No,
it will probably be
inside
inside of a building, I would think.
Yes, thankfully.
A building that might have pumpkins outside of it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a barn. If not a real barn, then something, resembling the aesthetic or the, sort of feeling you get at a barn. So yeah, there'll probably be pumpkins.
Do they have like barns that are just made for like events like this where they don't actually keep like livestock and stuff? Like is that a thing?
Yeah, I feel like this must be that. This must be that place, like almost a banquet hall, but it's a barn.
It's like a tourist barn for like all the people that want barn aesthetics.
I'm sure there's not like hay and like shit everywhere. Like,
oh god, yeah. And I imagine
it's probably just nice.
I imagine a lot of these barns as well maybe used to have livestock in them, but just because of like the mass industrialization of everything, it's like, well, we still have these barns about. Maybe we could use them for other things. And some people are going, well, I would like to have, even though we haven't had, farm communities in over 100 years here, I would like to have a farm wedding if possible. And those barns, they come in handy. So
yeah, people want to relive their Amish fantasies.
Exactly. God.
Yeah. Before the days of like those like chicken barns now where they have like 2 inches of space and they're just stacked on top of each other.
Oh God. Speaking of chicken barns, because it is
wow, that's actually apt.
Yeah, that is a weirdly apt segue to hi folks, welcome to Bullet Time, the video game podcast where we analyze the shooters that miss their marks. As per usual, I'm James, but we're trying something different this episode.
What?
I know we're not joined by any co-hosts, but we are joined by two guests. That being
Wait, what the fuck is the difference? What is the difference between a co-host and a guest host? I don't.
Well,
I'm listening to these episodes, and it's
no, that's fair enough. So the way that I kind of imagined it was that a co-host would kind of be somebody who might have a similar expertise to what we're talking about, and kind of does like the front of house stuff as well. Like I'm the person who always introduces the episodes, but the co-host may also be like, oh, you know, they'll throw topics into the mix and stuff like that. Or if it's Kevin, they have their own kind of little segment where they talk about like the zeitgeist of, you know, what was out at the time.
okay.
Or that kind of thing. But I'm not going to force you to do either of that. That being said, though, depending how this episode goes, maybe at the end, I'll like crown who was like actually the guest host of this episode. I'm going to create a competition aspect.
All right.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Get ready, Alex. Get ready.
It's on.
All right.
I'm gonna host this motherfucker. All right, let's go.
I suppose then before we can figure out who our secret guest host may actually be, we should probably introduce them. And folks, for this episode, our guests are the very best from the Midwest themselves. Riding in on their horses to this podcast today, we have dressed all in white, video essayist and podcast host Zach Frazier, while dressed all in black is video essayist ChariotRider, also known as Alex. How do you want me to refer to you, by the way, during the episode?
I mean, I don't care. Yeah, most people online just know me as Chariot, but I don't mind being called Alex.
Okay. I will do my best because it was a bit of a... So, interesting having you both on the podcast anyways, because it would be kind of a thing of like, oh, Zach Frazier and ChariotRider. That's not a pairing that I usually think of together as like, you know, come in pockets, much like, you know, maybe like Lamb Who and like Bobby Broccoli. That's kind of like a pairing that you could imagine. But there is a reason that the both of you are on this podcast, one of which we'll kind of get into when we talk about the game itself. But also... speaking of the Midwest, I did enjoy a lovely chain ride with the both of you from Milwaukee to Chicago back in September. For one moment, we were all like cowboys riding over from one state into the next. So yeah, I don't know. So it's almost like we're recreating that a little bit. And the reason that I mention that is because at the time, because I was meeting all my online friends, I was struggling to be like, okay, do I call you by your handle or should I use your name? Like, because I always think when you call people by their handle in real life, it feels a bit like you're in the film Hackers.
Haven't seen it,
Right.
but
Zach,
I imagine it's...
I've not seen Hackers. I need to see Hackers. I'm a bad person.
So just mostly for the both of you, and I guess a little bit for people at home who don't know, Hackers was like in the 1990s. It was kind of like it's not really an action film. It's kind of more of an adventure film, but not in the style of like the Goonies. It's slightly... Oh no, I guess it is like the Goonies, but it has an all-adult cast, which is weird. But it's basically like what people in the 90s thought hacking was like, and also, well, we can't just have people typing into code prompts on like a film. That's not very exciting. So they try and jazz it up with a lot of quick cutting, a lot of like snap zooms, a lot of footage of showing like the things that they're hacking, what's being affected, and what does that kind of look like. There's a shot where they just move a camera over a circuit board as electrons fly back and forth, because you know that's how circuit boards work. They just have free moving giant electrons on top of them. So it's a pretty good film. But yeah, and they all refer to themselves by their hacking names.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't stop calling VG, so it was hard. If I didn't know someone's name before we went, I was calling them their handle, and that was pretty much just VG.
No,
yeah,
so,
I think I also called VG a lot. Like I think I went back and forth depending on the moment. I just mixed it up.
depending on like when you were. Like when it was official, it was VG. When it was when it was a little bit lighter and unprofessional, it wasn't VG. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
The usted and I forget the other word in Spanish. Whatever. The formal and the informal.
Oh, like san and chan in like the honorifics in Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
It was funny because as you were saying the name VG, I was like racking in my head and I was like, okay, but what was his actual name? And I do now remember it was.
I don't remember either. I'm sorry, VG.
It's
Yeah, that was it.
Don't say that on the podcast.
No, I was about to say it, and then I was like, maybe I might need to bleep that out.
Yeah,
but that's okay, Chariot. We got
Wait, bleep it out. That'll be funny.
we'll bleep it out because then it will make it just sound like you're swearing, which will be even funnier. So,
yes, ChariotRider, known swearer.
ChariotRider, known bad boy. I mean, that's why you're the cowboy dressed all in black this episode.
Black,
I think that, you may come across as a sweet guy, but I don't know. When it comes to video game opinions, it might you might get heated. So
It's the sweetest people you have to watch out for.
yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I mean, what's the term like Minnesota nice, where it's like those are the people that you have to be cautious of.
I mean, they kind of like say that in general about the Midwest. Like, I've heard Iowa nice thrown around quite a bit. I could see Nebraska nice being a thing. Yeah. It's just, people in the Midwest, they put up a very nice front, but sometimes it's performative and sometimes it's genuine. You just have to figure it out.
Well, hopefully throughout this episode, that'll be another chat. I'm gonna factor that into my adjudication for who's gonna be the secret guest host.
Like, you want us to be nice, or you want us to not be nice? Is that you want us to break out of our mold?
That's the thing. I don't really want to tell. I want to run this in the background because I kind of want to keep you guys challenged.
Yeah, it's true. But, is this like reality television where you actually want like the chaotic, crazy personalities, because that's a lot more interesting than the straight laced, on top of everything people.
That's true, but sometimes like a buddy cop movie, you need the good cop and the bad cop in order to create chemistry.
Who's the straight man here? That's what we're gonna find out.
I mean, technically it should be me because I'm the host. I'm doing a very bad job at the moment. Speaking of, I guess for the folks at home, I'll pick on Alex. Oh, I just noticed we literally have from A to Z on this episode. We have Alex and Zach as guests.
Hey.
I will start with A though. Alex and then Zach. Do you just want to quickly introduce yourselves to the folks at home, just in case they don't know who you are?
Yeah. So I'm Alex, known online as ChariotRider, and I do video essays generally about weird, obscure kinds of games. My most recent video is about a game that maybe a couple hundred people have played in the past 10 years. Weird, strange stuff. That's all in my it's all in my court.
Nice. Zach, what about you?
I'm Zach Frazier. I make videos every once in a blue moon. A video essay here or there.
Yeah.
A weird Shrek art film every now and again.
That's true.
And I have a podcast going that James was actually on, and Chariot will be on at some point soonish. Games, etc. I just talk about games. If you just want some to chill out while you're like doing work.
It's kind of like a video game
talk about book games
club for like kind of
right, exactly.
Yeah, we both play the same thing over the course of a few. Well, I guess as long as it takes, really, and then we kind of join together and talk about it, and also, why was it chosen as a subject matter? At least that's kind of what happened with our the episode that I was on, where it was like, why everybody picked all these interesting and personal games? I picked this big AAA game. Why did I do that?
A AA game at the time. Come on, it was.
That's true.
Well, Bloodborne. That's a pretty AAA game.
That is a very AAA game. SimCity 3000, is that a triple? Does that count as a AAA game for the time? I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, was EA? No, it was just Maxis at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What was AAA in the 90s? Like Nintendo?
Crash.
I guess maybe Sega?
Like
Yeah.
Gran Turismo,
Sony?
maybe.
Yeah.
Medal of Honor, the first Medal of Honor game, I guess, is like a AAA FPS.
Okay, yeah.
Is the game that we're talking about today, would you consider this a AAA game of its era? Which, by the way, folks, we're talking about 1997's
Oh, yeah.
Outlaws, a game developed and published by LucasArts, which that could be factored into the question a little bit because, LucasArts, George Lucas's video game company. Does this qualify Outlaws as having something of a AAA prestige to it, or at least a big name prestige?
Oh, that is a really good question because LucasArts like they have a lot of prestige. I didn't grow up in the 90s, but I heard a ton about Monkey Island and all of these old classic LucasArts games.
Yeah,
But in all of the years hearing about this stuff, I've never heard anybody mention Outlaws until Campster mentioned it in one of his Children of Doom episodes.
yes.
And I was like, wait, LucasArts made a first-person shooter in the Midwest or in the West? Like I was shocked I had never heard of this game before.
Yeah.
So
I guess I'm sorry. I was gonna say I'm born in 95. I don't know the industry at the time that this game came out in 97.
No.
But I feel like PC games would have been so, there's the big titles, but everyone was kind of indie in a way. Doom was released as an indie game,
Yes.
but then it kind of catapulted them. Is 3D Realms a publisher or a developer?
Both really. So
Both?
3D Realms,
Okay.
3D Realms published a bunch of Duke Nukem was published by 3D Realms,
Yeah.
but I guess that was kind of made internally. Blood, I think, was published by 3D Realms, but that was developed by Monolith. That was the first game that they had made. But then there's also
Okay.
GT Interactive started publishing 3D Realms stuff, so it's a hat on a hat at that point. So
Fuck.
I get what you mean though. It is especially compared to today, where you have Microsoft,
Yeah.
who owns
Well, in
mega publishers. But
Well, and for the longest time, on the PC, the best-selling game was made by Rand and Robin Miller and their staff at Cyan, and that's I would consider Myst an indie game, but it was the
Right.
best-selling PC game of all time until I think it was The Sims that knocked it off. So it's just a very different ecosystem than what you would see on consoles.
My perception of AAA now is completely different than what even existed back then. It's we have all these big, we have these big ass massive publishers who've, conglomerated and ate up a bunch of people. And that's what AAA means to me. Whereas back then, maybe someone of the time could probably spell out their idea of it, but it doesn't feel the same, even an Activision or a EA of that time is unthinkable. It's a whole different beast probably.
God, yeah, you don't really have Call of Duty. I think most people would think of as what is a AAA game, and the new Call of Duties are made by multiple studios across the world versus the first Call of Duty was just made by Infinity. It was published by Activision, but it was just made by Infinity Ward. And then you have some Outlaws where the publisher is the developer, and in regards to its credits, it only has about 50 or so people on it, which is still quite a lot of people, but it is quite they just don't really make it. Well, I guess actually it's a little bit more 60, 70, 80 people, but it's still not as much as a modern game is by any extent,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of brings up another question I had about this, because was there ever a shareware release of Outlaws? Because I know Doom and a lot of shooters from maybe a little bit earlier had shareware releases where it was like the first couple of levels, and then you had to mail
this
off
was
your
on
money.
CD, so
Yeah.
I think it's
true.
97. It's on CD. Windows 95 is out. I think it's it's a different world than like the early 90s shareware.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. I'm not
No.
into retro PC shit like that, but
Sure.
I think that's probably what.
And I do think it's a bit of an interesting thing because although, I just said, the title of the subtitle of the podcast is The Shooters That Missed Their Marks. I wouldn't say that this was say Black or Geist or Legendary Wish with these hyper ambitious, wanted to be AAA level titles, but just missed the execution. This game, by all intents and circumstances, as a vision, completely nailed what it wanted to do. But what's interesting about it is that it comes out in 1997, which is the year after Quake, and most FPS games at this point are now shifting over into free. So this year we have on the N64 we get GoldenEye 007, so the first big proper FPS game for consoles, and that's fully 3D. Turok Dinosaur Hunter, again fully 3D. That's sort of what the expectation is now. And another LucasArts FPS game that comes out this year is Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, which ironically, the engine for this game was designed for the previous game, Dark Forces. But by the next one, they were kind of well, this has to be 3D because that's what the expectation is now. So on the other end, you still have 2D games coming out. This comes out the same year as Blurred and Redneck Rampage and Shadow Warrior, which are all built on the Build engine, which is what the Duke Nukem 3D engine is. And you also get Doom 64 for the N64, which kind of mixes together 2D and 3D. And I think at this point, most FPS play or this kind of growing FPS audience, they expect 3D stuff. And so this game comes out, which is a CD release, a big box release, but it is although it is incredibly stylish, it is in the style of a build engine game or an older Doom style game, because that's the engine that they used. And I think as a result, although there isn't a ton of sales data to go on, from what I did find out, this wasn't an enormous hit for LucasArts, but this was around the time that, we have George Lucas's money, so we're not really in this we're trying to push stuff forward, and then hey, maybe we might have a Star Wars game, which we know is that's a guarantor, essentially. That's the money that we can put towards other stuff. But it's weird. It's this is coming out right in the era of the big box Quake style games, but it is kind of very throwbacky to almost unlike Doom, I suppose.
Yeah, but it has a modern design. Modern, whatever,
of its time,
modern design, yeah,
absolutely.
right,
yeah,
design sensibility to it, yeah.
I had played a bit of Doom before, and comparing this game to Doom, one of the things I thought was really interesting was how the level design in something like Outlaws was a lot more comprehensible, and overall it felt way more naturalistic than something like a Doom, which is I have no idea what these corridors are like.
No.
Why is this hallway filled with toxic barrels? The levels of Doom don't make sense. And I get it is a science fiction it's Mars base.
Sure.
But I feel being kind of at the tail end of this style of first-person shooter kind of gives it the advantage of all of these previous years of level design insight. And, they're able to pull off stuff like there's that canyon level, which is
yeah.
That's you would never see that in something like Doom. Maybe some earlier games pulled off, naturalistic environments before, but I don't know, Outlaws really sells a naturalism in a way that I haven't personally experienced before in this style of late sprite based shooter game.
No, I agree, and it's interesting because it's like, I think like one of the, and I guess we'll kind of talk about the game a little bit more in detail, but like the thing that I quite liked about this was the fact that it's LucasArts making making a Western, and it's kind of like, well, how would like Lucas as a film company approach making a Western? And it's almost very kind of throwbacky in regards to, well, you know, like Indiana Jones essentially is like, well, we want to recreate the serials, so let's like hit all the high notes and like all the stuff that people expect, but like cut out all the fluff. And it's like, well, we're making a Western, so like, what are the things that people expect from the genre? Well, you need like a ghost town, you need a train, like a train robbery, and then like with this big canyon, it does very much, as you said, kind of. There's really no one has done stuff like this within it, like an engine of this sort, where it's very much about long snipers corridors and a lot of overlaid geometry. Like you're just kind of mostly running through chasms for a lot of it and going through caves and stuff. And it's not trying to make a level which like kind of, you know, almost on the John Romero brain side of stuff where it's like, oh, this has to be interesting and it loops into each other and you use keys. Like this is like one of the few levels in the game where there is no keys, which again, it's even though it's built on the Doom engine, this is an example of, well, can we move beyond Doom design a little bit to do something a bit more naturalistic? And I almost think it's weird. Like this comes out the same year as GoldenEye, which a lot of people kind of note as being, oh, we have these 3D environments which feel like real places. And a lot of that is down to like the level designer of that game was an architect. And so he kind of knew how places were constructed. And like they had rooms which might not be part of the mission, but they're just there because they're expected. And Outlaws has a little bit of that. Like it feels like building this elaborate Wild West set where you have furnished homes and stuff like that for the extent of, well, of course you would. We want to make this feel like a little living place. And to that extent, I think they do manage to pull it off really well, even within the limitations of everything looks like big blocky cubes.
Yeah.
On the subject of like the big blocky cubes, the horses in this game I thought were hilarious. Because they're like the sprites. So if you like move, you could circle around your horse, and it just rotates 90 degrees suddenly, and it never got old seeing the horses rotate.
No, it's my favorite thing of like, these old postcard 3D style games where enemies are just like completely locked onto you, so they just like. You just see them skew back and forth as you like strafe around them. God.
Yeah, I don't know why the horses are like the worst offender. They're just so big and it's so, I don't know, it's so obvious. Whereas the people are like walking around, so it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I guess the chickens are kind of small. What other animals living things are there?
There's cows.
Oh, yeah, there's cows, yeah.
I will say that's the one thing about this game which... Although we are kind of hopping around a little bit, but I mean, that's the podcast. We just hop around to different subjects. Not a lot of enemy variety, but then as like that thought bombed to my head, an immediate thought popped in and said, what other enemies could they do? It's a Western. You are only fighting other cowboys. And in fairness, like some of them have different weapon types and stuff. And like some have snipers or some have like, there's no assault rifles in this game because, of course, there isn't. It's a Western. But, like, some have shotguns and some have, like, 6-shooters and stuff. And I was just kind of like, damn, a lot of the same enemies in this. And then I was like, I don't know how they wouldn't be able to vary it up because... they have such a dedication to the real, quote, realism and the verisimilitude that they're just like, they're not going to have a dude... I mean, they could have had like a Gatling gun, dude. There's a Gatling gun in the game that you can use. I don't know why they never went in on that. But that's like, they never have anyone do anything super weird. Even the boss enemies are just guys with guns that do a fuck ton of damage. But like, they're not.
Oh my god.
Maybe the log dude.
Oh, did you die to the log guy?
Yeah, I died a time or two. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was the thing. Like, I played on like the good difficulty.
Oh, come on.
well, like-
Come on. What about you, James?
I played on bad difficulty. I will say though,
Yeah,
I
you
wish
did.
the difficulty was a little bit more like it actually explained to me what it was, because I assumed that ugly I guess is hard, but then like this is a cool homage you're going to, but I guess I would rather you just say easy, hard, and hardest. Like I don't quite get this.
Yeah. It's cute, but not super informative.
No.
And like, I guess coming into this, I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I really want to have to trudge through a complex maze shooter? Because that's been my experiences with these games. And with my busy schedule, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna try this on good and see where that goes. But I mentioned that because like, I would go through most of the levels, and the combat is really easy on good. I actually wish I had played on bad, but the second I would walk into a boss room, there's like a 50% chance that half of my health would instantly be annihilated. It is a insane jump from your normal goon who might at most deal like one of your little ticks of damage to dying in 2 shots from the boss.
Okay, it's good to know that's universal on every difficulty.
And it is funny because it's like I couldn't quite. The only thing that I figured out whether a character was a boss or not was on how much damage they did, because on the first level especially, you go up a pair of stairs into an attic and there's just a guy behind a box, but he looks like everybody else, but he hits a little bit harder. And then
He's got a different hat.
Okay, he has a slightly different hat. But you shoot him, and the moment you do, like, this game emulates okay, but the moment I shot this guy, like, my computer hitched like I thought it was going to crash, and then went to an FMV, and I was like, oh, I guess that guy must have been he must have been important, I suppose. And I kept doing this, like, level by level, where I would shoot who I thought was a random enemy, and then they would go, oh no, this was a boss. This was like an actual guy.
Oh, Marshall, you got me. Now go to the next level.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, I had to like, one of the most visually distinct enemies is in the mine level. There's like that lady who's like the doctor's wife, and she just shows up randomly in the level, and it's like, she's the only character like that, and there's no fanfare when you kill her or anything. She just drops a key and you move on.
Wait, a question.
Yes.
Did either of you have music playing during the game?
Yes.
Mine wouldn't play.
I had music.
I managed to get. Oh, neither of you managed to get music working.
No, I had music.
Okay, I had music
worked
working
perfectly
as
fine.
well.
The fuck?
God. It is a little bit awkward to get working. I couldn't get it running properly in windowed mode. Every time I did, it crashed. So I was like, okay, I'll play this, and I'll play by your rules, George Lucas. I'll play this in full screen. Even though I did use Joy-to-Key, so I could use a controller, which made it a lot smoother.
What? Why?
I love using a controller for FPS games.
You're weird.
See, this is the thing. This is the era of GoldenEye 007 Turek Dinosaur Hunters. Those are the first FPS games I remember, and then Halo Combat Evolved.
This is a PC game.
Yeah, like I can understand like using a controller for like a modern first-person shooter, because a lot of them are kind of designed for that.
Yeah.
But like, for a game like from the 90s on PC, where like they assumed you either just had a keyboard or a keyboard and mouse. Like,
yeah, right.
I don't know.
See, that's what I
grew
mean.
up
This
with a
game
lot
had
of PC
keyboard.
stuff.
This game expected keyboard aiming. How is that any different to, putting a big joystick over my numpad?
All right.
Yeah, it's fair.
I don't know.
All right, fine. Fine.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna factor that into who's the secret guest host this episode.
Fuck. Wait, we both have the same opinion.
Yeah, but
It's like the
who was the most
telltale,
accepting of what I was doing? That's the
I love you, James. I love everything you do.
This is like the telltale. James will remember that.
Yeah.
yeah, it pops up in the corner of the audio somehow. Yeah, but I played it in full screen, and God, I can't even remember what my point was because we went on that little tangent. Yeah, it didn't run in windowed super well.
Why is that weird?
Yeah, and it kept hitching, and
why wouldn't you want to play it in full screen?
Oh, it's just like playing stuff in windowed.
Oh, okay.
I find full screen quite
full
because I have like an ultra wide monitor as well, so it's stretched to hell.
Oh, okay.
Full screen.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Also, it's just a lot easier to record stuff in windowed mode. I tried setting OBS up to record Outlaws, but I couldn't get OBS to work, so I ended up using Shadowplay to record it instead. But I also got like the hitching every time I wanted to save the game and reload.
Oh yeah,
that was another hitch, which was not. It's a little awkward, but I've played worse PC.
Did either of you mod the game?
No, I didn't. I think I knew there were mods for the game, but I didn't really touch them. I mean, I might mention some of the interesting mods that I saw towards maybe the end of the episode. I mean, Zach, did you?
I mean, yeah, just like the quality of life stuff. I forget.
Okay, so what did you? I didn't even know that I had it. That might have helped me
I should
quite
have
a
said
bit.
something. Let me see. I got like a small list of mods I downloaded. Let me open up the file.
Yeah, I think to kind of like circle back to what I was meant to say, which was that I think it is quite interesting that we have two guests on this, which are coming from this game in very different directions. Which is obviously Chariot. You were born long after this game came out, and only really discovered it I guess maybe a year ago from the as you said, the Campster video. But like when I was talking about games I wanted to cover for Bullet Time, this was one that you flagged as I would be interested in talking about this. Versus Zach, where I was like, what are some games that you'd like to talk about for Bullet Time? And you've given me two. One of them which I will keep a secret for when we do that episode. But the other one was Outlaws, and I was like, interesting, because I've heard of this game, but I don't know much about it. And you were like, well, this was like one of like my earliest games that I'd ever played, and one that I still have like quite a lot of fondness for. So I suppose like I don't know what's your sort of like I guess how were you introduced to Outlaws, and I don't know how did you compare it to other stuff at the time? I suppose
my daddy let me play Outlaws. Yeah, so my dad was a big PC gamer, like Half-Life, Outlaws, Command and Conquer. Duke
Nukem 3D?
No, actually. I mean, well, maybe, but like I never saw that being played. Military sims like Delta Force and like Black Hawk Down. That was that came a little later. But in any case, yeah, so my dad built PCs. He helped people fix their PCs and stuff. So he was just into that whole culture. And so we had Outlaws. I think my father likes Westerns. He's born in the 60s. So I think he was probably into the films and stuff like that. And probably some of the TV too. Bonanza and fucking, I forget the other cowboy shows. Anyway, so he's probably into all that. And I think my dad, seeing how he likes games as he's gotten older and like what he cares about, he really cares about like realism and like great graphics and like a good story, you know, because he's like a movie guy. And like he really loves Red Dead Redemption 2. Like that's the one game he built like a stupid, like the most expensive computer you could make a couple months ago. He made that for Red Dead Redemption 2. Overkill. But, you know, at least it's kind of future proof-ish. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I can see why my dad liked this game. Like it's very, you know, it's not Doom. It's not, I'm sure he played Doom. You know, he probably thought it was fun, but like this like appealed to his, you know, like, oh, there's a story. It's not like, you know, a super strong one. It's interstitial between every level, but like there's the little animations and like just this world.
The intro.
Yeah, that's a detailed long intro.
The intro animation's quite like robust, like before you even start the game, which is surprising.
Well, and I feel like for the time, it was a special, you know, I feel like this kind of thing was just a lot less common back then. because you could just get away with like slapping a Doom Marine in a sci-fi setting, and that was all the story people needed. And so like the fact that they went so above and beyond, like doing like the 2D animation for like a lot of the stuff is 2D animated alongside like the 3D animation. Like that's a lot of effort. And so like just for the time period, I feel like the presentation and storytelling is a bit more noteworthy than it is today in comparison to like games that do a lot more of this kind of
for an
thing.
FPS of that time. And I think like my dad probably liked that like you embody this character and he's a dude, he has a name, he has a wife that's dead, and you want to avenge her, and you want to kill this,
and the kid, you want to find the kid as well.
Right, exactly. But so I played some of it as a boy. I didn't get very far because I was like 5 or 6 or 7. I was dumb. But I liked going around shooting people. And I thought like, so I also played Half-Life at that time, and I thought Half-Life was like definitely cooler, like just being fully 3D and this crazy sci-fi story and all these monsters and shit. But like I had a soft spot for Outlaws too. It wasn't like, I've never beaten it before. This is the first time I'd ever finished it. And this was kind of, it was almost like not a bucket list thing. I'm not like, I wasn't worried I was going to die and not play
You're
it.
not dying, hopefully.
But even still, it's like, if I didn't play it before I died, it wouldn't be like a huge deal. But it was just nice to like actually see it through and be like, oh, this is what I was playing all those years ago. And so that's kind of my relationship to it. I had, I've messed around with it sometimes. I grew up with it. It was around. And now I put it to bed, put it to rest.
I was going to say, does this game hold up in your opinion?
I think so. I have a, I have a fondness, I guess, for very standard FPS games. Like some people like reality television.
Okay.
Some people like watching TikTok. Playing a first-person shooter where you just go around and kind of just shoot dudes in a sort of a plain manner. That's like my shit. Like I could do that all day. Like I played all the Halo games like during COVID because I was like, I just need to shoot something. I played Syndicate. Classic. You're probably gonna cover that. I was just like, I just want to shoot people. Here's a random game to do that with. That's why I was so interested in this podcast, because I'm like, oh my god, it's all the games that I want to get to because it's just so simple and be kind of mindless. This game isn't wholly mindless, especially with like some of the, I guess, not puzzles, but
level gimmicks.
Right. Yeah, the maze, like not maze, I don't know, just sorry.
So, some stuff like the mines is like a little bit cryptic in regards to like navigating it and whatever. Chariot though, there's kind of more, you're more on like the other side of like, I wanted you on the podcast because obviously I'd like to have ChariotRider involved in my projects, but you're not really much of an FPS guy.
Not really. Like I don't have anything in particular against first-person shooters. Like I play like a decent amount of stuff that is adjacent to first-person shooters, but
Comer.
I in general like
Comer. Yeah, that's good example.
Yes. Comer is a it's a very much
it's
not
a proto
shooter, but like you're shooting ideas.
Shit.
From your noggin. But like I very much like weird and kind of stuff that's doing stuff that's very different.
Yes.
So like last year, my favorite game of 2021 was Cruelty Squad, which that very much is a shooter.
Absolutely.
But like it's also such an unconventional shooter that goes out of its way to break a lot of the rules of shooter design.
And graphic
and
design.
like that's
Yeah.
like that is what kept me going through Cruelty Squad, was just like how abrasive and strange and surreal it was.
Yeah.
Whereas like something like Halo, like, you know, I had started playing Halo Reach like a couple of years ago when like the Master Chief Collection came out. And at the time, like, you know, it was like a pretty hefty install on my machine because I hadn't, you know, gotten some more memory yet.
Yeah.
And like I got to like the space level, and you know, it's just like, yeah, like, you know, this is okay, but like, you know, I ended up uninstalling the game so I could have more room to play. You know, I forget what I uninstalled it for, but like, you know, it's like, it was a fine shooter, but it just like didn't really have the weirdness for me.
Sure.
So like, you know, I can respect like, you know, a game that's competent and feels decent to like play, but generally like with a shooter, I want there to be something else going on top of that. You know, something like Nosferatu, The Wrath of Malachi, you know, where it has like this strange procedural generation and you're like rescuing members of your family. Like that's, you know, I hear that and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. As opposed to like, oh, another game where you walk down hallways and shoot people. You know, it takes a little more than that to get me invested in a game.
So I guess what I would ask then is that what about Outlaws was it that had you interested enough to like put time into it then?
I mean, I think part of it was just like I was blindsided by like the fact that I had never heard of it before.
Sure.
Like you know, it was like, okay, this game is interesting because it, you know, it is late to that like, you know, style of game.
Yeah.
And it represents kind of like the last gasp of that style of design, at least until like, you know, recent times where people are like intentionally making games in the style of Doom, where like that's cool
like
again.
Ion Fury and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, I thought it would be interesting from the, you know, just seeing like, you know, this game that comes out after years of all this stuff and after the world has kind of like moved on from that kind of game, like what does, you know, that style of design look like?
Yeah.
And I thought like that was you know, that was interesting enough to like get me through the game and just see like, you know, what kind of weird stuff they threw into this game. 'Cause like it is a lot of running through hallways and shooting people, but at least like the, you know, there's some like, you know, the levels look very interesting. Like I thought like graphically, the levels were very nice. And also like, you know, the story wasn't groundbreaking by any means, but some of the characters were kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, so like, it was like, you know, it was a unexpected surprise for sure. 'Cause I was not expecting there to be any kind of like competent story. So when the game opens up with like a 5-minute cutscene introducing your characters, like, oh, that was, you know, they caught me off guard.
Yeah.
But in a good way.
It is interesting because like, I think I was a little bit like you in regards to, I had only learned about the game from the Camster video, and then I kind of did a little bit of like looking into it. It's like, oh, this is interesting. Then like the idea was pitched to do Outlaws, and I was like, okay, well, I'll play it and kind of see a little bit more into it. And I think the thing that shocked me most was the fact that like I looked after the fact to be like, okay, what LucasArts people worked on this. And the lead designer had contributed to Full Throttle, the Tim Schafer point-and-click adventure game. And when I knew that, I was like, kind of stuff snapped into my head of, yeah, that kind of makes sense because like this has like almost the production values of that late era point-and-click adventure stuff that they were doing at LucasArts, where you have Full Throttle, where it is like we're mixing really high quality 2D art with like early 3D stuff, and we know that 3D is very good at doing like hard surfaces, so all the vehicles will be that, but then all the characters will be hand drawn, and like these really kind of not like I can't imagine like maybe big budgeted for their time, which I think is kind of one of the reasons why LucasArts fell out of doing the point and click stuff, because they were throwing so much money at it but in returns of a lot of people were falling off it because, I mean, they were getting kind of their adventure fix and a lot of other stuff, including the FPS. And so you have this interesting like crossroads where it's all the things that you would like from a LucasArts point and click of really good voice acting, really good artwork, a lot of like really ambitious kind of story ideas, but in a kind of a more palatable format of an FPS. And it is interesting that, like, controls-wise, it does feel very Doom-like, but then there are, like, some interesting tweaks to it. Like, this is maybe the only game from this period that we've covered so far, especially, like, a 2D-style game, which has, like, a zoom function on a weapon.
Yeah.
Like, the rifle that you can get has a telescope on it, and the way that it works is actually like emulated optics, which is so interesting. Like, I was like, how did they do this?
Yeah, well, and like you mentioned, like, you know, the designers coming from Full Throttle, and like I could kind of feel a lot of like you know, I've played some of the LucasArts adventure games, mostly Grim Fandango, but like I think you can kind of tell that these developers have some experience with like point and click adventure games. Like in the second level, there's like, you know, you can pick up a pen. Yeah. And it's like you can go over and like sign, like you can sign like the guest book, and if you do that, you can go under the you know, you can go under the building, and that's where like that's where I found the scoped rifle. And so it's like, you know, and like I know keys and stuff were kind of common for these sorts of games, but like, you know, like it felt like there was a bit more thought put into like the kind of adventure gamey. Yep, this game has a bit of an adventure game feel.
Yeah.
That a lot of other games, you know, of this style don't have. It feels, which I thought that was really neat.
It feels certainly like an evolution from like Doom, where it is keys and locks, and like this game has that, but it makes sense because the keys are like prison cell key or bronze key for the outhouse, and it's like, okay, that makes sense. And then like in Duke Nukem, you go the extra step of there's interactables, but they're kind of like toys almost. So like you might have a pinball machine or something like that. And this game has that in regards to, yeah, you can fill out books and stuff, but then they go the extra mile of how do we kind of combine these things together? And like in the second level, the way that you're meant to progress is you grab a shovel from a farm, like from a barn, and then you use that shovel to dig under like a bank to get inside of it. And it's like, okay, yeah, like much like an old LucasArts adventure game, there isn't a ton of like signposting that that's what you're meant to do, but it is really interesting that it's like, yeah, no, you've made a Doom game where like just blasting people apart isn't the main way ahead. That also requires a little bit of like item gathering and smart puzzle use, which is super interesting. Like, especially again, a game which is coming out the same year as like Shadow Warrior and stuff like that. It's trying to like, yeah, move it more into the realm of LucasArts adventure games.
Yeah, they're you like the realism that we're talking about is like they wanted to create a Western world, and that's what an adventure game is, right? Like it's an excuse to like they have gameplay where it's like puzzles and shit, but it's an excuse to create a world and create a story. Obviously, this doesn't do the story as much because there's mostly shooting and guys just yelling your name. But
Marshall,
right? Marshall, come out,
Marshall.
But yeah. So I think, yeah, they do all of this stuff is in service of this world, this adventure type world. Like even like reloading, like that's sort of realistic and like adds a sort of different feel. I mean, you know, I guess I don't know how many games had reloading at the time, but
well, and I was even going to mention this, you know, like about like how the shooting actually felt. Like I thought the way the weapons were designed was actually kind of really interesting.
Yeah.
Largely because of the reloading. Because like unlike Doom, you can run into a room with your like, revolver, but you only have 6 shots.
Yes.
So it's like you run out of that really quickly. And then it's like, your weapon does not have like the same level of sustainability that you would get in something like Doom. So like I found myself like, weaving in and out of combat, popping around the corner, shooting a couple guys, going back, throwing in a couple, bullets, and then running around to finish the rest. And most of the weapons do not have a lot of ammo. You have the revolver, which, is a 6-shot. All of the shotguns were very limited on ammo. Like the only one that you could really like run in and just shoot for a while was the rifle.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even like ideal for up close and personal combat. So I don't know. I thought the way like reloading tied into combat, gave the shooting a bit of an interesting texture, for like this style of game.
And you can so to the people at home, how you reload is you hold down the reload button. You don't just tap it. That will do 1 bullet.
It does 1 bullet at a time, which is so like no FPS game does that apart from this one.
It feels like you are loading a gun, as much as holding down 1 button does. Like when you're playing it in terms of game feel, it's like, oh yeah, here I am, chip, thumbing in all these bullets into your revolver. And it also allows some strategy, right? Like you can just stop reloading if you want. There's automatic canceling. So that's kind of nice. I don't know if that really helps anyone, but it's just versatile and it feels good, weirdly. Sometimes it's hard to crouch and reload because you're holding down both buttons, but otherwise.
It is really funny, and it does feel almost kind of like they knew they were making an FPS game, but they sat down and they said, okay, but it's a Western first, so what sort of things would we think about? And it was almost like, well, bullets should be kind of a bit more of a rarity in this game. Like you are going to have to shoot people, but we want to make it so like aiming is very. I mean, I'm just going to read this quote about the game, written by John Romero, the inventor of Doom. I say the inventor of the Doom. He worked on the team. Lots of people worked on Doom, not just him. But funnily enough, on Moby Games, this is one of his favorite games of all time. And he says, you must play Outlaws to see what's missing from the genre. This is a highly original Western shooter that I dare say may have been the first game to introduce the first elements of today's tactical shooters like Ghost Recon. And when he said, 1 or 2 shots and you're dead, do not mess up. And it's like, yeah, this does feel very Ghost Recon-y in a weird way. Like, when I was fighting, like, even though, like, when I was playing this on controller and I was doing, like, slicing the pie motions and stuff like I used to do in Rainbow Six, and it's like, but in this shooter that looks like Cowboy Doom, this is weird.
And that's probably a function of, one, all the enemies are hit scan weapon wielders, right? So like that's going to change the gameplay completely. You have to, like Chariot was saying, stop and pop and like weave in and out and cut the pie. I'm not sure that technique. I didn't play Rainbow Six, but I cutting pies. Like if it feels very almost not proto Half-Life, but like, Half-Life's another game that has a lot of hit scan kind of enemies. Like those soldiers are very, they're like the logical next step of this. Whereas these guys don't really have AI. They're just, billboards kind of moving about in a space, floating around. That, Half-Life had more tactile, tactics
it had a
to
whole
their enemy.
like
To their enemies.
unique, like that was touted as one of the big innovations of Half-Life was like their very advanced AI system where like the guys would do barks and
radio
throw
and
grenades
stuff
to
like
fish
that.
you out and like all that stuff.
This is like this was leading into that kind of thing, which then leads into the ghost recon stuff. Like, so I think hit scan enemies is a big part of it. I think that's probably most of it, really, and the sort of realistic-ish level design. You're just in rooms. You're just breaching a house or something, basically.
Yeah, no, that is very kind of Rainbow Six in it. Is that like most of the enemies are in houses, and you do almost breach them like in Rainbow Six, but you're the marshal in the 1800s, and these are all like they look like guys from Tobacco Packet cowboy guys, It's all just the police breaking into places and killing everyone they see, Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Huh?
Exactly.
God, sorry. I'm just laughing there. God, what was I going to say? It is weird though, because it's like, as you said, these enemies will just, so it's funny because this does do a lot of mix of outdoors and indoors, because as we were saying earlier with the canyon level, that is nearly all outdoors, and it is such a different tone because it's mostly a lot of like sniping battle stuff, which is, again, Doom didn't have snipers in it because they didn't have the technology to do it. Duke Nukem didn't do it because it was like, it wanted to be a bit more about like CQC. And so you get this, and it's like, you have like sniper battles on the canyon, and it's like, again, I've like haven't felt anything like that since, God, I am trying to think of like FPS games which have those kind of like sniper battles, I guess Battlefield.
I mean, there's like Sniper Elite.
Oh, Sniper Elite, yeah, that's a good example. But like being done in this engine where it is cardboard cutouts on really rudimentary looking 3D, but the fact that it is so oddly forward, it is like so weirdly innovative in that stuff. And I do wonder just how much of it was from the fact of we're making a Western, so what's all the stuff that we want from a Western to be in it? Because I guess, as you said, with Doom, the levels are kind of illogical, but because it's a space base, you very rarely head outside, because why would you want to be on the surface of Mars? It's dangerous. So it's mostly like close quarters and stuff like that, versus here where they just try a bit of everything, which is so, appreciated, I think, in my years.
You have to do that with such limited enemy variety and design, right? Like, it's just dudes with either pistols, a shotgun, or a rifle. So it's like, all right, well, we got to change this up.
Well, and like, to be fair to Doom, like the sniping is like cool in the sense that like it's a bit novel, and like not a lot of other games do this. But I also think like there's maybe a reason why Doom, like beyond like technical, like when I was going through like the canyon level, because that was the level that like had this issue the most. Like, kind of the optimal strategy was just to like sit like 500 miles away from the enemy, and you could just take your time and line up your crosshair and just snipe all the enemies like way outside of their effective range. Whereas like I feel like the combat was at its best when it was close quarters, and you had to like juggle your weapons and frantically reload before they turn around and shoot you again. And so like having these big expansive levels is cool because like that is naturalistic, and I think like that's neat to see. But also like I can see why Doom gravitated to more like constrained maze-like level design, especially with its set of enemies that really plays well like with its levels, where like different enemies work well at different ranges. Yeah,
you have the melee guys, you have the projectile guys, and and it is funny because one of the quotes that's in an upcoming episode that we do about Heretic and Hexen, the id guys kind of worked a little bit on that, and John Carmack's kind of a weird influence on the design of those, and especially Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, where the way that he says it almost kind of sounds off like he's coming off as an annoyed programmer, where it's like, rather than do two things bad, let's do one thing good. But in the regards to like Wolf 3D and especially Doom, he wrote this like ray casting engine which was really good at doing mazes and rendering them out very quickly. But he just very kind of caught on to the fact that no, it's the close quarters stuff that and like moving really fast through close quarters, but that's what feels really good here. Like and he says that the Heretic guys who wanted to make like this D&D style FPS game, you can't, like, let's not try and aim for that level of ambition. Why Doom worked was because Doom had this particular flavor to it. So just try and kind of stay within those parameters. And yeah, it's interesting. Like, obviously, I said at the beginning that the fact that this was a 2D game in 97 probably didn't help it much. But I do think it is like, it's very much like hitting the glass at the top of the engine of like so much stuff that they could do. And so while it is like really ambitious, not everything quite lands as it should.
Well, and like I also was, I've been thinking about like you were thinking about other like 2D games that like didn't that had these kinds of sniper battles, and like even like were there any like first person shooters in general that had sniper rifles before Outlaws? Like I'm trying to think of
I think
any and like so like I feel like Outlaws, like it was maybe one of the earlier attempts at putting sniping in one of these games. And like I think later games have figured out better how to like balance sniping. Yep. Like if you look at Half-Life, like it has a sniper rifle and it's really powerful, but you get a lot less ammunition for it.
Sure.
So like if I got less bullets,
drop off, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think if I just got less bullets for the sniper rifle in Outlaws, like I probably wouldn't find myself defaulting to that every time I saw enemies like
dedicated
in
gun.
The distance. Yeah.
It was funny because I was trying to think in the top of my head. It was like, what's the earliest game, or like what's a game that makes sense with snipe? I don't know why I said Battlefield because I barely used them there. But Halo Combat Evolved was like the first proper FPS game I could remember using the snipers in them. And the reason that the snipers worked in those levels is because they built the entire level around using the sniper. Like, they would be nighttime stealth missions where the point was that you would deal with enemies beforehand who would be like on very set patrol paths before you then went on to do much more else, versus here where the enemies that they still function the same as they do in normal levels, but they just have this kind of extended view, I suppose, which again, it's cool that this was like one of the first games to kind of try this out, but then obviously it set the bar for everybody else to go, okay, here's kind of where we can improve.
Yeah, snipers are, I think personally, kind of inherently uninteresting or undynamic. Yeah. It's just like, I see you from afar and now I got you. Like the only thing, it's just, can you aim well? So like you need to create good sniping missions or whatever, create more interesting scenarios. Either there's another sniper after you, or or in the case of Modern Warfare, the sniping was almost not really even the point.
Oh no, absolutely. That's why people had no scope compilations, because they didn't even bother using the scope on it. It is funny, I didn't really think of that, but yeah, like just inherently snipers aren't very improvisational weapons, and that seems to be what a lot of the fun of Doom is that, oh, I've run out of ammo for this weapon, time to change to this, or oh, time to move to this place. But if you just had if there was like a level before E1M1 where you just sniped all the enemies in E1M1, it wouldn't be that entertaining.
No. That's why
it's like swatting flies.
Right, exactly.
Like there's little stakes, and it's like, it's a matter of time, not like whether you'll succeed.
That's why sniping games are stealth games and not action games.
That's
partially.
Dennis made a very good video about that.
Or like, there has to be like some kind of downside. So like in Cruelty Squad, you can have a sniper rifle, but like that's one of your two weapons. So then like you have less weapon variety for when you're dealing with enemies up close.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So and like, you can't snipe everyone. So, like I think that game does sniping well, but it balances it in a different way than
absolutely.
like, Halo.
Mm-hmm.
we kind of recorded these episodes out of order, but so one thing that I want to touch on that we can maybe talk about for a bit is this is probably one of the most interesting looking FPSs that we have covered so far in regards to like Heretic and Hexen do kind of have like well, they're not illustrations, they're like Doom in regards to like their 3D models or 3D looking models that they've shrunk down into sprites, but they're very kind of toony looking. But this looks like the hand, like the levels and the characters that you fight against, and even the HUD and stuff, look like the hand-drawn animation stuff that they do. And the hand-drawn animation stuff they do looks like late era LucasArts, like full throttle style. What's the third Monkey Island game called? I can't remember. There's Secret of Monkey Island, Return to Monkey Island, and then Curse of Monkey Island, I think. I don't know, but it's maybe. It's as like full like 2D animation in it. Oh, Sam & Max as well kind of has that, and it is like super impressive looking. And this has it in regards to, well, not only do you have there's two things. So in the introduction, you have the beginning animation, which is the most fucking 90s in-carter multimedia looking animation I have ever seen of. They do like comedy credits of like introducing all the people who worked on the game, and all the text animates in a means that is reflective of what they do. So the project manager, the letters in his name are all scattered like sheep, and then his name comes in to round it all up. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is very like Bill Nye 1990s, you know. Hey, we got this 3D animation package. Let's see what we can do with it. And then that smash cuts to your wife being murdered and your daughter being hit there. But that beginning animation is really interesting because, again, it's like you can definitely tell they're super, super influenced by, like, you know, cowboy, you know, westerns and stuff like that. I mean, you know, the difficulty setting is literally good, bad, and ugly. The music sounds like Sergio Leone's, you know, scores to the Dollars trilogy, and like you expect it. And again, like the story itself is very kind of guy used to be a sheriff. He retired to live on the farm, but oh no, there's barons come in, and he wants to. Oh, I need that farmland so I can build like a railway track on it because that's what they were doing in the Wild West times. They were building that sort of stuff, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go get revenge, but it looks so not odd, just it's got a very kind of like 90s Nickelodeon look to it, is the only way I can really describe.
I wouldn't have compared it to Nickelodeon, but I also didn't watch much Nickelodeon, so
no, that's like fair.
You know, I've seen like the Full Throttle animations, and it looked pretty similar to those. Yeah. So I guess I wouldn't have made like the, you know, like this is a specifically 90s thing, but that's probably my Gen Z speaking.
I was thinking kind of like Ren and Stimpy, Class P plus Popes. Zach, you kind of know a bit more what I'm like thinking of, yeah.
I mean, yeah, we've got a previous Rugrat voice acting the daughter.
Oh yeah.
Oh. I don't know her name, but Lil, the girl who plays Lil, plays the daughter. The daughter. Yeah, I will say, the one thing I had to note, I was rewatching the cutscenes before we started talking. Your dude's arms are fucking long.
Oh yeah,
shit.
Your guy is a genuine, like, before he was a sheriff, he was an orangutan. He has got the lanky Kong-assed arms I have ever seen.
He could walk on his knuckles and it'd be fine.
And the moment I noticed it, it's meant to be the sad moment where he buries his head and he's holding the shovel in his
hat on
hands. His arms are like twice as long as like normal people's arms. And it's like, wait, what? And he puts the hat on and his like elbows all the way down to his knee, and it's like, what the fuck?
Longest arms in the West.
Oh, truly.
That's why he was the sheriff. He could put his pistols out the longest.
But yeah, so there is that cartoony style to it, clearly.
Yeah, it's very kind of not. It's gross out, but not in the way that like Ren and Stimpy, SpongeBob, you know, they have a static image of like, you know, somebody's face close up. But like all the proportions are super kind of like, I don't want to call them wonky. I think it's very intentional.
Yeah.
Very kind of exaggerated.
Yeah.
And to the extent of fucking Dr. Death, the guy who kills your wife.
Dude.
And
That mouth.
His teeth.
like he has like really tiny teeth and hundreds of them. God,
I don't know what happened to his teeth.
He's voiced by Q from Star Trek, John Delancey. Also, the Chariot, you've been watching this recently, Breaking Bad. Did you finish season 2?
I did finish season 2.
So, do you know, spoilers for Breaking Bad to people who've never seen it, you know Jane, as Jesse's girlfriend who dies?
Yes.
Her dad, who is the air traffic controller, that's him.
Oh, shit. I saw that picture online
really?
and I was like, who is this guy? Why do I know his face? Wow.
Yeah, famous for playing Q on Star Trek The Next Generation, Jane's dad, who causes the plane crash in Breaking Bad, and Dr. Death in 1997's Outlaws. He's a man of many talents. God. But yeah, I'm just thinking of... Because a funny thing that I kind of want to mention as well is the fact that, like, at the beginning of the game, your guy is... Oh, I'm a retired sheriff. Oh, that life was never really for me. And then, oh, my wife's dead. Well, I'm going to go get rid. But he seems quite temperate all the way through. But then I noticed with the log guy, in the animation,
Dude, yeah.
the log guy just falls on the log. And then it's like in Austin Powers where the flattener is rolling towards the guy as slowly. This guy on the log is going towards the cutter as slowly as possible. And at no point does Marshall, I can't even remember, is John something.
Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. So John Anderson doesn't intervene at any point, and then the guy dies, and then he goes, "Shame. I wanted to talk to him." It's like, wait, what?
He like picks up the pipe and it's like, you know, yeah, that I hadn't thought about like how long he was on the log, but yeah, that yeah, that's strange.
Sorry. I just wanted to say something about the story a little bit. Because there's not much. But like, you know, so at the beginning of the game, there's the extended cutscene. You know, you leave the farm, you're going to go buy groceries or
rose
the general
water
store.
for my wife.
Rose water, yeah. What's that fancy flower water? Rose water.
Rose water. She's a very lucky lady, Anderson.
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't die while you're not here at the vow.
She's got great taste, Mr. Anderson. She smells nice too. Anyway, a little sex joke in there. Anyway, so he's talking to the guy, and the guy's like, you know, he's trying to. So I guess the marshal got fired. I guess because he was killing people who, you know, didn't get a fair trial. And Marshall seems to be kind of understanding of that decision, or, you know, he's sort of saying like,
yeah, well, he's like, you know, there's no such thing as an innocent.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Like,
right. The guy's like, well, you never killed anyone who's innocent. And he's like, I never met an innocent man. And it's like, okay, so like, is that sort of everyone deserves a chance because no one's innocent, or are you just gonna murder everyone?
Yeah. Well, and it's like if this guy has only gone off like the script once and like murdered a couple of people that he wasn't supposed to, you know, before they got their trial, and then like the next day, like this happens, and he just guns down hundreds of people,
hundreds of people in 10-gallon hats. It doesn't even matter if they're aggressors, as long as you wear a hat and you have the same sprite as these bad. Yeah,
because the guys who the civilians, none of them wear hats.
That's true. Yeah, the guys
dudes in the jail.
I really like that touch as well. Is that like all the townspeople are in the jail?
Yeah.
Yes. I guess that goes back to like the whole like naturalistic, you know, world stuff where it's like, you don't find like the prison where they throw all the scientists in Doom.
That's
right?
true.
Like, just another example of that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't even think that they put those people in there to like house the they took over the town. I didn't even think of that. That's smart. Shit.
No, and it's cool because it is like such a touch of like in any other game they would just go to the cruelty of, well, there's nobody in town because they're all dead. So it almost kind of has almost a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing of, oh no, all the townsfolk, they're in the jail, and all the people who should be in jail, they're in town. And it's like, oh, you gotta go and sort them out, Sheriff. And it's like, at the beginning, it's like, okay, that's really cute. Then you get to fighting Dr. Death in the mines, where he almost falls down the mine shaft, and he goes, oh, you gotta believe me, Marshall. She's inside the house. And then you start walking away, and he goes, I'm glad I killed your wife, though. And you go, well, there's no point interrogating this guy anymore. I'm going to use the cigar to burn the rope that's holding him in place so he can fall to his death. And it's like, that's pretty cool, John Anderson.
Yeah, he's a cool motherfucker.
There is literally the scene before that, though, which I want to mention, which made me laugh, is they cut back to the Baron's house, and the Baron's just like, that Anderson, he's making stuff tough for me. And they cut to Dr. Death, and he's like, I can't even remember what he says, and he's like, well, the guy's mentally ill, so you should put him out of his misery. Then Dr. Death goes, oh, good, I was hoping for justification for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then it immediately cuts to his wife or like his woman partner who just goes, and I'll deal with the girl.
Yeah, and then you gun her down in the level, and that's her exit. That's the one line of dialogue she got.
That is literally all she got. God, it's a very cool game though. I mean, yeah, the graphics are like, I mean, I haven't even mentioned the HUD, which, yeah, even though you individually, well, you can individually or hold to load your bullets. But the way that your bullets are represented are like an old-fashioned, cash register, like where the little like paper slots come up, and the same's with your health, and I don't know, it's just a cool little touch.
Yeah, everything fits the style.
Yeah,
even like your stamina meter. I don't know if you realize, because like the stamina meter, you have to like press a button to show it. But it's like a little like
thermometer.
That's like a little thermometer or something. Yeah,
like a little mercury.
So it all works.
Thermometer.
So the only thing I didn't do was beat this game. So I assume you.
What the hell?
Oh, you didn't?
I tried.
Are you ever going to beat a game?
I tried.
Are you ever going to beat one of these?
I beat Black.
Oh shit! All right.
Did you at least get to the final level? Like, did you at least start?
That was why I stopped, because I was having a bit of a tough time, and I was just like, you know what?
Okay.
I'm done. I'll have a look on Wikipedia. I'll see how this game ends, I guess. I should have watched a clip on YouTube. That might have maybe made a bit more sense. Then I could have known what happened. I assume you stop the Baron and get your daughter back, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and like,
oh, sorry.
Well, like, I thought like the last level was really cool because like, you spend the whole game like building up this arsenal of weapons, which most of them aren't like, super distinct. Like 3 of them are shotguns that are functionally almost identical. But then like, in this final level, you get captured by the bandits and like you start with just your fists.
Yeah.
And you just like fight back for all of your weaponry right as you go up to like this final climactic, battle. Like I thought that was a really interesting curveball to throw right at the end of the game.
Yeah.
You know what did that?
What?
Half-Life a year later.
Yes, it did.
They stole.
Oh my god, Half-Life does exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
This game is forward thinking.
Gabe Newell was like, "Stop the presses, put up the handbrake. We need to change everything. Look at this game. It's called Outlaws. We need to copy their sniper and their ending."
Well, and they stole the desert too. It's like,
and
oh man,
desert,
this game is a really good desert. We have to put that in Half-Life now.
God.
It's all so blatant now. I hate that game now.
He really turned against Half-Life. Oh god. Are there any cool stuff that happens in the game that we want to mention before we talk about other stuff?
I mean, I don't know if it's cool per se, but I have to give a special shout out to the sawmill level, because that level, it's probably my least favorite. Like, it is the one that feels the most labyrinthine in the like worst way, where like most of the level, like I'd already gunned down, like, you know, the enemies were not hard to deal with, but just like figuring out like which pathway I hadn't gone down, because most of the rooms looked pretty similar.
Identical.
They look identical. There's like 5 different paths that you have to clear. And then like one of them, like the part where you go up into the like big water tank and you have to like go down the water slide.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and there's like these levers. And I thought you had to like, you know, interact with them like every other button in the game. And so like I was trying to like, you know, jump in the water to like press the lever to like, you know, change it. I didn't realize you could just shoot them. Until like I'd gone down that water slide like 5 times.
I don't think there's any other objects in the game that you shoot and it does something besides kill a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the one. Like you know, I played one of the historical missions. It was like the Civil War one. I didn't finish that one, but you know, I was just wanting to see what those were like. And that one, like if you shoot out the lights, like it puts fire everywhere.
Yeah.
Cool.
So like that's cool, but like that's not really a, you know, that nothing's tied to that with progression. It's just a neat visual effect.
Sure. I mean, you have played this game before, but I guess on this replay, did you try any of the historical missions?
No, I did play them as a boy, as a lad, though.
Yeah.
Just because they, you know, I didn't have to progress through a story. It was kind of a one and done deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't. I like started the Civil War one, but then I was like, I'm good. I'm done shooting people like this.
So in the GOG release, which I think so Cherry, you played the GOG version, I'm guessing. Right?
I played the Steam release actually.
Oh, okay. Zach, what about you? Did you have like the original disc?
Yeah.
Did you Steam or GOG?
Oh, I've got the GOG.
Okay, because
wish I had
in the
discs.
GOG version, and I believe in the Steam version, it's called Outlaws plus a handful
of missions,
and basically the way that worked was that like the historical missions were some that were in the base game. And it's kind of weird because I was trying to find like interview stuff about it, but I was mostly just found like a lot of people who had wrote about the game after the fact. And it seemed like the historical missions were basically like a late addition where they quite liked the game and they wanted to do more with it. But the way that they had written the plot and done the cutscenes, there wasn't really a lot of wiggle room to do much more. So the whole thing with the historical missions were, well, we got some ideas that we want to try out, and you know, these don't have to be super fleshed out, but it's weird because it's like you could play them before the main missions because it's almost like a bit of a like you get like a little tutorial area where you get like access to all the weapons and you can try them out, and then basically you go on, as you said, these little one and done missions which like you do the missions in the main game and it's treated like as cinematically as could be in 97 where you have a cutscene, you have cutscene bookends, but you don't get like, you know, but then that's it. But then in the missions themselves, it's more kind of Doom-like where you get the little high score screen at the end of like every mission that you do. And it's way more encouraging in regards to replay these levels and go for kind of higher scores and better kills and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, this is, again, like sort of like how they have the open areas where they're a bit more snipey and then the close quarter stuff. This is kind of experimenting with how much can we kind of squeeze out of this engine and out of this concept. And then with handful of missions where they add the Civil War stuff to it again, like, it's them trying to push the concept a little bit more. Handful of missions is so weird though, because apparently like it was one of the first examples of like online DLC. Like you went to LucasArts website to download them, and this was like in 98 or 99. You could also get them from like PC Gamer magazine. They would just like come on a disc and a paper slip. So Very
interesting.
neat.
Well, and you mentioned like them like doing weird stuff. Like I didn't play all of them. I also like was messing around a little bit in one of I was playing those a little bit before jumping on the podcast.
Yes,
but one of them. It's an ice level.
Yeah.
And it has the platformer, like people, a lot of people dislike the platformer ice levels.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I have to say, like, Doom style first person shooters do not do ice levels particularly well.
No.
It was not, it was a lot of just strange movements, on top of kind of like, well, where do I go? And it's like, oh, you have to platform, but like saving the game takes like an extra 10 seconds because it's, because of modern PC wonkiness.
Sure.
So, it was just not, fun sliding around.
I didn't have trouble saving the game. I don't know what y'all were talking about.
It would save, it would just like do the hitch thing. Where like
I didn't have that.
It would do the hitch thing where he'd come out and say, okay, when you want to talk to women, you got to be all about it.
Fuck you.
Turn around now, hit it. Turn around now, switch. God, multiplayer is something that I didn't get to try, but I did do a little bit of research into. Did either of you, I suppose, Chariot, did you get like much of a chance to have a look at it, or like?
I did not.
No, in fairness,
so
this is
no
the one
idea
thing with like some of the older episodes. Some of the episodes of Bullet Time will do about older stuff is that like we'd love to tap into the multiplayer stuff, but like finding people to play those games with and like getting those running is a bit of a pain.
Well, actually, I was watching. I was watching the full playthrough of the game to look at the cutscenes, like just before we started, and there was a YouTube account that was like, "Hey, people, if you want to join our like community, we still play Outlaws multiplayer or whatever."
That's really funny.
So that's the thing.
I was about to mention that to do research for the multiplayer to see what it was like. Which, again, single player is playing around with a lot of different ideas in regards to. It's a Doom build style game, but they try a lot of different ideas in regards to the tone that they're going for, level design and stuff like that. Handful of missions does a little bit similar with the throwback stuff. But then with the multiplayer, it is almost kind of weirdly class-based in regards to there's 6 playable characters, and they all have different stats, and they all have different special abilities as well. Like some are quicker than the other ones, some are heartier than the other ones, and they're all derived from characters that are in the main campaign. So
like the bosses.
Yeah, Anderson and Dr. Death and the bosses as well. So it's weird that it's kind of like this proto hero shooter in a weird way. Where you have like an FPS.
It's like Team Fortress.
It's like PvE Team Fortress, although it does have deathmatch and team deathmatch, which I guess makes it more like Team Fortress in a weird way. But the interesting thing with multiplayer was
this would predate that, right?
Team Fortress.
That was in Quake.
So Team Fortress 1 is in Quake. Is it Quake Arena or is it in Quake? Because Quake 1 came out in 96, and I don't let me have a quick look. When did Team Fortress 1 come out for Quake? 1990. Okay, so this would have predated Outlaws. And Outlaws, I guess, is doing it in a bit of a different way as well, because they're not like classes so much as they're just like characters with their own special. Again, though, it would be like in Overwatch where it was PvE and like it was one of each person in a weird way. But the reason I mentioned that I found that YouTube channel is that people are still playing it. And not only that, they are modding in content. And did you see the clip that I saw, which is that they've been modding in levels from Call of Duty?
Wait.
No, what?
I hadn't seen this.
Okay, so they had gone to the effort of using... So I forgot to mention, actually. So the name of the engine that they built this in was the Jedi engine, which was LucasArts' own internal build style, and it worked exactly like build in regards to it did it based on like partitions, which is why you could have like rooms on top of each other and stuff like that. But they were able to basically use like a modified version of the Jedi engine to build levels. And they were recreating levels from Call of Duty, including Nuketown from Black Ops.
Oh my.
And it's so weird watching it because in my head I was going, yeah, this is kind of weirdly like Call of Duty, you know, online maps, which have like a decent mix of like fast moving close quarters, and then you might have a sniper's alley. And again, like the one thing that we sort of touched on a little bit is that like this game has a lot of outsides and insides. And so, yeah, there's a lot we talked about it earlier. There's a lot of like breach tactics and stuff, very much like Call of Duty, which is all in play when you're watching the multiplayer stuff. And it is so just weird watching it because it is like, this is something that I recognize, but like in this old fashioned technology.
I gotta watch this. I gotta see this happening.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
It's very neat.
And like, you know, it is always interesting seeing like, you know, because like this is something that I think is relatively common, where like, you know, people will like take a, you know, they'll take a famous multiplayer map and they'll just port it to other games. You know, like this happens a lot with like a 2 Fort from Team Fortress 2, or they'll like bring those other maps into Team Fortress, or like, you know,
DDoS.
And so like it, you know, Nuketown is one I'm trying to think of like other games that have added Nuketown, you know, through fan mods and content.
I was going to say fan mods I can't think of, but I was going to say that like Call of Duty Warzones is a weird example of they try to make a battle royale map out of maps from previous Call of Duty multiplayer maps. And so you can walk from like one map to another, and you can walk from like, say, a Foundry map to Nuketown. It's just in the middle of the world kind of thing. It's very neat. But yeah, just like, it is very cool, just that kind of thing of, oh, I have tools to like recreate stuff. Like, I'd love to know like if somebody's tried to like recreate Nuketown in like Halo Forge or something like that. I'm sure that's probably been done.
I looked it up, and you know, apparently someone has made it in GTA Online.
Oh, okay.
What?
Interesting. I didn't know the GTA Online mod tools were like that decent, really. But that's neat.
That's just the first thing that comes up, so
wow.
You know, I don't know any details, but
that's all right.
But Nuketown and GTA, very
cool. Would GTA Online exist without Outlaws? Maybe, but the question is being thrown to I'm thrown it to the panel. What do we think?
What? Would GTA Online exist without Outlaws?
Yeah.
I mean,
don't even.
It almost certainly would. I mean, like
don't even give him the satisfaction. Alex, be quiet. We're going to sustain a moment of silence for 3 minutes. Go.
For 3 Oh, not for 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Absolutely not.
Starting now.
Oh, God. Is there... I want to say, because we haven't really touched upon this too much in bullet time. And actually, I don't even really know if I want to touch upon it here, but in my notes, I had written bad shooter bingo, which I think the idea was, oh, what are some of the cardinal sins of an FPS game that this accidentally commits? And all I literally wrote was, the levels are kind of confusing. Which, yeah, I guess maybe that is a bad FPS thing of, it has got slightly confusing level layouts, but after a while you do figure them out, so it's not that bad.
I did get stuck like twice.
Yeah.
There were,
the sawmill got me stuck for quite a while. Yeah. And like it took me a little bit to figure out the one in like the Pueblo cliffside dwelling level.
There's like a bridge that like descends out of the ceiling, and the button for it like you should be using your lantern more, I guess, but it wasn't. So I couldn't really see this button. It blended in. It's like a texture on a wall. Like I'm not, it doesn't. they don't make it obvious that it's like, oh, here's a bridge. Like, so I had to look that up. I was stuck for 30 minutes just running around.
Well, like earlier there was the like interactable like wheels in the wall, and you had to like, you know, put in the right code in order to like unlock the secret panel. And like the first time I did that, like I just completely guessed and got it. So when I got to like the next one, it took me forever to figure out what to do. Well, also like I didn't even realize those were interactable for quite a while. Like most of that level was okay. Like you know, that I was a little concerned because, you know, you had to pick up these stone tablets, and I was like, oh no, is this going to be like a massive key hunt? Fortunately, like it was not too bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
because you know, it's pretty easy to find.
They're on the main path. Yeah.
Like right. I will say, like, that level was a little weird because, like, you know, I this kind of goes back to what we were saying about like the enemy variety and stuff. But like, you know, the boss of that level is like it's a Native American man.
Yeah.
And you know, I was just not quite sure about that whole, like, it kind of felt like it was veering into questionable Western territory.
Yeah, that sort of felt like where, well, we're paying homage to Western films, which means we also have to have this shitty inclusion to be kind of like, so like it feels like what we're parodying,
but
essentially.
He was wise and sympathetic. It's good.
Well, yeah, like he was the only like sympathetic villain. Which like
but it's weird that he was a villain as well, because again, like, it's the whole it was the thing that I mentioned earlier, which is just you shoot a random guy and it turns out that was the guy you were meant to shoot, and so you just have your bloodthirsty Anderson kills this guy who then goes, oh, I guess this is how I die, and he's like, wait, what? Wait, you're not a cowboy. Like, what did I do?
No, he's like, oh yeah, like I know what it's like to fight for my kids, or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I know what your daughter is.
Well, and like I had read the manual beforehand.
Oh,
and I'm pulling this up because it gives a little bit more of like his backstory, where like I think his whole thing was like he was trying to be forced onto a reservation, so he fought back against the government, and that's why he became like an outlaw. I'm just scrolling down to where it describes him. Okay, so this is what it says in the manual.
Okay.
Chief Two Feathers, a Navajo Indian leader. He and a handful of his warriors refused to surrender when his people were rounded up by the army and taken to a reservation. This once noble warrior has turned to stage and Pony Express robbery to buy weapons and ammunition for his gang of renegades. Well, and like one, like we don't see any other Native Americans in the game. Like all of the people fighting in that level, they're all white. Like they're all white bandit outlaws.
The chewing gum cowboys that you've been fighting for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's just like, man, would this person really ally themselves with like this particular person, like the person who's buying up all the land to make like.
For the
like a city, like that's like the motivation of like, you know, the big bad. Like he felt out of place.
Yeah.
With everyone else. Like
it was a weird. I agree. It was a bit of a weird misfire, considering that like all of the other enemies are kind of just like shitty mercenaries who again are working for this company guy who, you know, classic Western villain, and also kind of an ironic Western villain, because it's like, well, I guess we know that eventually he wins because I live in a city right now. But, you know, again, like having this poor Navajo guy in it that you just shoot unceremoniously is like, yeah, a bit of an odd misfire.
Yeah, like after shooting up, like, you know, his home, like Pueblo style, like living, like it's like the cliff dwelling. You know, I've been to like some of these cliff dwelling sites, and like they're really interesting and historical. And you've just been blasting shotguns into the wall, and you know, that whole level just felt really weird from that whole perspective.
Yeah, the tone was a bit off. On that note, where do we feel Outlaws kind of fits in the canon of like Western video games, which weirdly there isn't a lot of. Not as like versus like sci-fi and World War II and stuff like that. You feel like there would be more Westerns, and there are like a bunch of Western FPS games. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of bullet time caliber ones as well, which we will probably like Gun, Red Dead, Revolver, Dark Wars, the Call of Juarez games. But like, I think to most people, if you say Western game, they would think, oh, Red Dead Redemption and 2. Yeah. Like, those are the only decent ones. But
well, and like, I remember Noah Caldwell Gervais talking about this in, I think it was his Red Dead Redemption video, where like, the Western became so popular in the film industry because it was really cheap to film. You could just roll out a bunch of cameras in the middle of nowhere, put some guys on some ponies, and like you have a movie. But like for games, like it was kind of exactly the opposite, where like having these big, expansive, vegetation-filled, like intricate, expansive landscapes is really expensive for like game design, especially as games have gotten like increasingly higher fidelity. So like it's a lot of money to make a Western game. And so like I think that is definitely contributing to it.
Yeah.
I also just think like Westerns had probably fallen out of like being super, super popular by the time video games were really coming into vogue.
Oh, sure, yeah. And like games are getting big around the time of like the horror, like the VHS horror booms, which is why you kind of get those style of games, but also they kind of aimed at a younger audience as well, which is kind of why they lean a bit kiddier as well in some respects. And kind of as we kind of like keep touching on with Doom, like with Carmack and Romero, like that game is so smartly designed in regards to, well, we built an engine which is really good at drawing mazes very quick. So why don't we sense it on a space station in Mars? So like, and that contributes to the whole sort of sci-fi shooter thing, because people go, oh, this works. Why don't we use the Alien license and Star Wars and make it work in this? Which, I mean, the fact that LucasArts never make another Outlaws, but like this comes out the same year as a second Star Wars Dark Forces game, I think kind of does contribute to the fact as well of, just that's sort of what the industry's wavelength was, and I guess still kind of is.
Well, yeah, and it's like in the decades that fall, like now, like, I feel like the technology is definitely there to make, like, it's easier to make a Western now.
Sure.
At least for like indie, if you're not aiming to be like Red Dead Redemption 2, where the horse testicles shrink in the cold.
That's an important part of the genre, but okay.
But like, as games are kind of like building off of what comes before, like there's a lot of nostalgia and fondness for like all these old sci-fi shooters.
Yeah.
So like, it's like, oh, well, we're going to make a callback to Doom and Quake. So, it's going to be sci-fi and horror and gothic stuff, where like there's not a lineage of like Western themed games to like, recreate and like draw back on for like modern. At least like it's not as like there's some, there's like Weird West. And like, there are Western games, but like they pull more on other genre, like they pull more on like film and literature than like old games.
Yeah,
because
like Red Dead Redemption doesn't have much reverence for Red Dead Revolver. It's more kind of taking from like John Ford films and like spaghetti westerns. Yeah, God. I don't know. Could we see I mean, it is funny. Like before we started recording the podcast, that you did send me a link, which was somebody was working on an Outlaws. They were trying to remake Outlaws in Unity, And it didn't look bad, but it did kind of look like very Unity demo-y. Like, the thing that was most unique to what the Outlaws stuff is that they'd imported the sprites for, like, the character shooting and, like, punching and stuff like that. Which, I don't know, looked pretty neat.
Did you?
But,
you didn't like play it or anything? You didn't?
Oh no, I did. Yeah, I gave it a little go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. Some of the I guess maybe quality of life improvements, or like specifically what I was thinking about was the shooting. So they kind of figured out how to bridge the gap between a hit scan game and a projectile game where they have bullets with trails that I think probably move a bit. They probably are technically projectiles. So they kind of fixed that. At least, not that I don't think this game the original had a problem with that too much. I think enemies hold their fire long enough for you to sort of react. It's almost like it's like a gun range. And if you don't aim and shoot fast enough, that's when you get punished. So I don't think Outlaws really had a problem, but at least this remake I thought was interesting, was kind of trying to deal with that sort of problem. And also I think it has headshots, which is interesting. And I mean, being able to see your bullets where they go is kind of nice, because at least in the original, it's sort of, I don't know if there's auto aim or like kind of the bullets are magnetized to the enemies, or like what it is.
I think there is also aim, because I think it's one of the options in the menu is like they don't call it auto aim though.
Oh, okay.
But it is.
Damn, I should have maybe. Well, I don't know if I wanted. Actually, I don't know if I would have turned that off. That might have been miserable if the bullets were, because they kind of have like a spread to them. Like even the revolver and stuff. Like you don't know if it's going directly straight.
Yeah, well, and like I played with the crosshair off.
Oh wow.
It wasn't too hard, but like, I don't know, like for a game that's already so like quote unquote like immersive,
true.
It felt a bit gamey to turn on, a crosshair, and like I got through just fine without it. So I wasn't too bothered by not having one, but like it makes it really hard to tell, like, is auto aim a thing? Because I would aim, and like sometimes it would be hard to tell if it was my aim or just the game being weird that caused me to miss.
Right. And I don't think that's a big problem.
No.
But it's a little like annoying, I guess. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, and like on the subject of like, Outlaws coming back, like I was also like, Outlaws reminded me a little bit of a game that's still in development called Fallen Aces.
Oh yeah.
Have either of you seen that game?
It did remind me a
every
lot
time
of
I
Fallen
see
Aces.
Fallen Aces, I'm like, the Outlaws style is back. But I think Fallen Aces is has a bit more going on than Outlaws.
Yeah, and obviously it's not
like it seemed a bit immersive sim-y.
Yeah, it does have amazing. I mean, so Fallen Aces is like I think New Blood are publishing it, and it has got that kind of. It's just you just see a new minute-long Twitter video every 2 weeks of here's something that we've added. You can now throw boxes, or you can tickle people and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but it does very much have. It reminded me a little bit of. Have either of you played Void Bastards?
Yeah.
Yes.
It has a little bit of that art style where it is 3D world, but like again, like if they did, because it's funny because Full Throttle got a remaster of sorts where they redrew all of the artwork to be high res, and I almost wondered like if they did the same thing for Outlaws where they redid all the artwork to be high res, like would it look kind of like Void Bastards or like Fallen Aces where it has like a very specifically comic booky look to it, and like would they lean into that? Would they add like sound effects and stuff like that, or would they try and like stick more in the thing of they were sort of aiming for naturalism but with this Courage the Cowardly Dog art style?
I just imagined a version of this game where instead of like drawn comic book characters, they just had photos of people, and it really made me upset. I don't like it's like Mortal Kombat. I do not like how the old Mortal Kombats look. I really don't like that. Like photo of an actor
Oh,
style.
digitized actors.
Yeah, that's not my bag.
I mean, like, you know, Street Fighter, like Street Fighter 2, I think holds up visually a lot better than like
yeah.
the Mortal
Oh,
Kombat.
yeah.
You know, it just is a lot more appealing artistically.
I always think about that in regards to Donkey Kong Country, where I think the backgrounds still look really good in that game, but the characters themselves have like a kind of a weird ugly factor to them, which I don't know if they could remake that in that way.
No. I mean, I kind of like the approach that they take for like the most recent Donkey Kong games. You know, like just going full 3D.
Oh, yeah.
Like that works really well. You know, while still feeling like the old games.
Yeah, the graphics are like good enough that they can do that kind of like lush, you know, 10 layers of depth to a level kind of look, and, you know, still have it run pretty well. But God, yeah, Outlaws with like digitized graphics. It is funny that in all of this I forgot to mention, and the whole reason that I brought up Full Throttle to begin with was that all the horses are CGI, and you can tell because they move in cutscenes. They move so stiffly.
Yeah.
It is bizarre.
And then that cutscene with the Baron or whatever, when he's telling all the dudes.
when they do the turnaround, and he just and he turns into the guy from the Money for Nothing video.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I get it. They wanted to do this cool camera move around the character. It would have been really hard to animate a 2D character where the camera is like on I don't even know, like rotating circle, the semicircle around him. But yeah,
it's cute though. It feels oddly scrappy for LucasArts, which is
it feels like an earlier version of what like would turn into Grim Fandango.
Yeah,
like Grim Fandango feels like a refined version of like the 3D like aesthetic in this.
I'm very like built around limitations, like the fact that they all have those flat faces with highly, well, not like super detailed textures, but they have like those animated textures for like talking and stuff. Feels like, one, a bit of a limitation of what they can do, but two, like, oh, well, we can turn that limitation into like a creative choice almost, which, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think if they were to remake this, like, I would like to see them kind of lean on some of those limitation elements, because I do think, again, in Outlaws, it kind of gives it a bit of a creative edge as well.
Well, and like, I also just think like, you know, mechanically, like if they were to remake this, like I think leaning more into the like adventure game stuff. Like that would like that would be really cool. Like more stuff like the guest book, where like, you know, if you like solve like the adventure game puzzle, you'll like find like a secret stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't know where they would put it, but like,
I think
that would be, you know, the game already has that, and like I feel like it could put it into a lot more of the game.
Yeah, it'd be cool. Maybe lean in a bit more stealth side of stuff. Maybe have it so your guy isn't as bloodthirsty. Have like, you know, multiple ways to deal with foes other than just shooting them. I mean, obviously at this point, I'm just trying to like describe, you know, cowboy Deus Ex. Which, I mean, again, I don't know how Insimi Fallen Aces is going to be, but maybe not a bad, you know, template for that.
Right.
Just instead of 30s cartoon gangsters, it's cowboys. I don't know. I don't know. Would we still, even if they did remake it, would we say worth going back and giving Outlaws a try there?
I think so. I think it's, I mean, besides getting it running, it's the only barrier to entry. I think it's, if someone's into FPSs and like in the same way that I am, where it's just like, you just want to shoot some dudes and, you know, have a chill time, like it, besides getting into it, like literally starting it up, it's pretty smooth sailing all the way through, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like, you know, I've definitely, like, this is far from the most tedious game to set up on modern systems.
Yeah,
that would have to go to Shogo for me personally.
Oh yeah, a game that we debated doing. Maybe we may do Shogo at some point, but that's on the burner because that is miserable to try and get running.
yeah, it took me like an entire evening of like, installing graphics wrappers and, setting up all that nonsense. But, like out of the box, like it does not run terribly.
No.
And like, and then to answer your original question of like, is this worth playing in 2022? I think it is. Like I think like, Doom is still quite popular, and like a lot of people go back and play like all, they play the Dooms and they play the Quakes and they play like all like these older games. And I think like for fans of like old PC shooters, like Outlaws is kind of an interesting evolutionary offshoot.
Yeah.
That does some really different stuff from like all these other games. And like, it hasn't gotten much attention since like it came out. But like if if you've already played Doom like 5 times and you want something new from like that style of game, like Outlaws is definitely the game to check out, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's as we said, being sort of related to the modern sort of Call of Duties and Ghost Recons, and like being related to that lineage, I think is interesting to see from a game of this style.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a game you can't accuse of not having an identity. Right. Like I'm sure on this show, like there's some games that like you'll play them and it's like, what is this game even trying to? What was that, like Legendary, where it just like, well, I don't know. That game has some iconic stuff, I guess. I haven't played much Legendary.
Yeah.
But I'm sure like, this is not a generic game. You won't walk away from this being like, well, I guess I'll just never think of this game again.
Yeah.
Because it's just so generic.
And I think to just kind of add on to that, like LucasArts, especially in regards to, I think they're back in kind of the spotlight again because of the new Monkey Island game that Devolver and Ron Gilbert's new business have done. And I think when it comes to LucasArts, like especially now, they're only really thought of in regards to, well, they did Star Wars games and they did some point and click adventure games, but there's like a lot of stuff to their back catalog that I think so many people miss out on. Outlaws being one of them. Another one being, they were the people who invented like Pipe Dream. Like, the mini game in BioShock where you rotate the pipe, you put the pipe pieces in to make like a single pipeline. Yeah. That mini game which is in so many places. Like, yeah, that was LucasArts were the people who figured out that game. Like they were the first, they were the ones to flag that moon, which is like, okay. And then like Transparency's made like a really good video about like one of the first MMO games was LucasArts, which was like you lived in a little digital town, and like that was them. They Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which is like one of my favorite SNES games. It is published by Konami, but it was developed by, because LucasArts were in a bit of a weird period when, so Atari owned like the Star Wars, like the rights to make Star Wars games for decades, which is why they initially couldn't make Star Wars stuff. But as a result, like LucasArts could publish some of their own stuff, but when it came to consoles, they had like no proper distribution channels, so they would work with other people. And Konami published Zombies Ate My Neighbors for them. But yeah, that was them. That was an internal LucasArts joint.
Yeah,
and I think they did a couple of other ones. Like Metal Warriors is like another game that they did for Konami. There's just like this entire history to them that I feel like, again, a lot of people forget about because, well, they're the Star Wars guys, which, again, kind of coming back around to this, they built this engine originally to make, what if we did Star Wars Doom, two great tastes that taste great together, but then made something just way more unique out of it in regards to Outlaws. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Very neat. Before we wrap things up, folks, boys, we're gonna play a game. We're gonna play a game at the end of the episode. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. Everyone's favorite part of bullet time. We're doing the quiz, folks. Now, because we record these episodes out of order, unfortunately, I've already asked Kevin what the top selling games of 1997 were, because another game that came out this year was Hexen 2. But that's no problem, because I will be quizzing you and Chariot on What were the top Metacritic scores of 1997?
What the?
Oh.
Now, unfortunately, Outlaws didn't make the list on this.
Really?
No, but we will be focusing on the top 5. And at number 1 on this list, with 96 out of 100 approval on Metacritic, is a FPS game that has been mentioned twice already on this episode.
Quake?
It's not Quake.
That was 96, right?
That was 96.
Oh yeah, that was
96. Was it Duke Nukem?
It was not Duke Nukem.
Man.
It is an FPS game that I would enjoy.
Oh, GoldenEye.
It's GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64. Chariot, what were you going to guess before?
I was going to guess Blood. I'm not sure what year that came out.
Blood also came out in 97, but nope.
Okay.
It was GoldenEye 007 for the N64. Now, at number 2 is a game that if I gave you the genre, it would give it away immediately. So all I'm going to say is it is the game that invented a genre for and it came out on the PlayStation, and it is a entry in a long-running Konami franchise.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Castlevania Symphony of the
Nice.
Night for the PlayStation, inventing the genre of the Metroidvania.
Yeah.
For extra points, this will be between 90 and 100. What did it get? What does it have out of 100? Positive scores wise.
94?
Very close. 93.
Ooh.
Now,
Damn,
at
couldn't get
number
that
3,
94.
yeah. At number 3 is a game that I've never heard of before, so we're going to have to all work together to figure this out. It's at 92 approval rating and 1997 on Metacritic. It is a game which there is a long-running series of games that are all named after a game designer, but this isn't part of that series, but it is like within this empire that he's built for himself.
Oh, is it a...
this has to be a Sid Meier's.
Yeah.
It is a Sid Meier, so that is the first bit. The second bit, it's about the Civil War, I believe. So it is Sid Meier's something.
Oh man.
Gettysburg?
Sid Meier's Gettysburg. 92%
Hell
on
yeah.
Metacritic. We got that quicker than I was expecting. Well, I
haven't heard of Gettysburg. You know, I've heard of like colonization before. You know, Sid Meier's colonization.
So this was
for
in
a
the
game
weird
with such
period
high Metacritics.
This was in the weird period where Hasbro or Atari still had the Civ name, but they had all left to form Firaxis. And so they were just making anything they could that wasn't Civilization, but was like Civilization related. And yeah, this was one of them. And then eventually they got the Civ name back, and that's how we got Civilization 3. So
I like how Sid Meier's was like, I just want to simulate what it was like for the most people to die in a battle. that's the entire game.
Oh,
he's just sitting back in his chair watching the simulation going, this is good. People will pay full price. I can see a big box copy of this on LGR one day.
Right.
Number 4 on the list, 92% approval rating on Metacritic, one of the biggest role-playing games of all time.
Was it Final Fantasy VII?
It is Final Fantasy VII.
Sweet.
The PlayStation. And then at number 5, hopefully Chariot. Actually, yeah, Chariot, you might be able to pull this back. Let's see what happens. Number 5 at 92% is another PlayStation game. Some would say a classic PlayStation title, but I feel like most people will have forgotten it by now. Would be in your wheelhouse, though, I would say. I don't want to give away its genre because I feel like that would be a bit too obvious. So all I will say is that... God, I'm trying to think of ways to like describe this game that doesn't like immediately give it away. You play as a dog.
Ooh, LSD Dream Simulator.
It's not
No, you
LSD
play as a gray man in that one.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah.
See, like this is where like I haven't gotten around to setting up my PlayStation emulator yet. So like, I feel very like this is a blind spot for me.
Okay. Zach might be getting this one as well.
Sony PlayStation
Playing
dog
as a
games.
dog.
He plays a dog. This is a character that was so popular that he was in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
What?
Oh, Parappa the Rapper.
Parappa the Rapper. Yes, number 5, Parappa the Rapper.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess there's no way to not. Yeah, like a rhythm game, like what? Yeah.
Yeah, if I said rhythm game, you get it. If I said you rap, you would have got it. I was about to say, they're all flat characters, and I was like, no, that's like the most like defining image of that game as well. So it's like, god damn it. But yeah, Parappa the Rapper. Number 5. Man, 1997, huh? What a time for games. You had GoldenEye on one end, making console FPS games viable. Final Fantasy VII, the biggest RPG still to some people. But then you also had Sid Meier's Gettysburg, a game that no one remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah. This feels like, very representative of like a period that's like things are about to be changing rapidly.
Yes.
This is a changing of the guards. Out with the old, in with all the crazy new stuff.
Absolutely.
And also Sid Meier's Gettysburg.
Hey, if it wasn't for Gettysburg, they may not have got Civilization back, and then we wouldn't have had Civ 5. We might not have had XCOM 2. So
that's true.
And what a world that would have been. Lads, thank you very much for coming on the podcast to tell me about Outlaws and all the other stuff that we have natted about today. It has been lovely. I'm going to go in opposite alphabetical order now because we went in regular alphabetical order earlier. Zach, is there anything for the folks at home you want to like plug or promote before we wrap things up?
No.
Not the podcast again, or your Twitter or videos or whatever.
You can follow me at ZC_FRZR if you want to see me tweet weird jokes or my creative things every now and again. I've got the podcast, the Games Etc. podcast. Me and James's about Batman Arkham Asylum will be coming out some point. I don't know, before or after this goes out.
Maybe
I don't
after,
know when you're planning.
Maybe after this. We're recording this relatively close to when it's actually going out versus like
okay.
The episode after this where not only is my audio worse, but it's just like, hey, start of a new series. I don't know, we're just talking about, I can't believe the Kaiser got shot. Oh, they're talking about a war in Europe. I hope that doesn't go. We're talking about it's such an old episode. We're talking about the invention of fire in that one. But hopefully people won't notice. But yeah, the Twitter and the Games Etc. podcast, I'll be sure to point people in that direction. Chariot, what about you? Is there any last plugs or things you want to point people towards?
I mean, I guess like there's always my Twitter, ChariotRider YT. There's also like the old Twitter account I have, Shopkeepers of Gaming. I've been meaning to like get back to updating that. If you know of any interesting shopkeepers in games, message that account and I'll probably post it.
Nice.
And then that's the only other like thing I can think of to promote aside from my YouTube channel, also ChariotRider.
Lovely. Have you got any exciting videos on the way?
Unfortunately not. I've been very
you've been busy.
I've been very busy.
Yeah.
Very busy with school and I just had to add a couple of classes to my next semester, so I'm up to 19 credit hours again.
Oh boy.
Dude.
But I do appear in Evelyn's or I Am Error's most recent video. So if you want to see like a short little piece about Kerbal Space Program and my changing relationship with it, go watch that video.
Nice. I will be sure to point people in that direction. As always, I've been James. You can follow me on Twitter at HotCyder, HOTCYDER. You can support the podcast over on Patreon at HotCyder as well. We're going to be staying in the past, though, for the next episode, folks. So we'll be going back a few years earlier from 1997 to 1994 and 1995, because we will be embarking on a brand new mini-series, the first of its kind for Bullet Time. We will be talking about Raven Software and their first-person shooters. Joining me as co-host for that will be Kevin from Pixel It. By the way, we never came up with. I never decided who.
I was just about to ask. I didn't want to interrupt your outro, but we never figured out who the co-host was.
Yeah,
you know
Daddy,
what?
Who is it?
Okay, you know what? I think to drive engagement, folks at home, I want you to comment.
Oh my God!
Comment on this episode, either on YouTube or your podcast app of choice. Let me know who you want. Who was your co-host for this episode? Was it the black cowboy ChariotRider or the white cowboy Zach Frazier? And when I say colors, I mean in regards to their hats, not anything else. Because we're all white.
And maybe our jacket, but
maybe, yeah.
Definitely the hat.
Yes. Next week we'll be looking at Heretic.
I vote Chariot.
Yeah. Okay. I will vote for Zach to balance stuff out.
Yeah, I'll also vote for Zach.
Oh God!
So
what the hell?
We'll even it out.
Okay, I will vote for myself. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna stay a neutral party then. You two vote for each other, and we'll see what happens. People on Twitter weigh in as well. Let us know who was the guest host for this episode. But next episode will be Kevin from Pixel It will be joining us for the entire Raven mini-series. And we'll be looking at 1994's Heretic and 1995's Sex and Beyond Heretic, where we will be joined by video essayist I Am Error, Evelyn, who you just mentioned you did a little video for. So it all ties up in a nice bow. But until next time, folks, keep blasting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, did you forget that was our sign-off, was keep blasting?
Yeah, I did.
Who is the person who came up with that?
Who do you think came up with keep blasting, Chariot?
That sounds like a Zach thing.
That sounds like Hamish.
No, it was Hamish didn't know how to take when I said. I mean, Snake was the most disgusted when I said keep blasting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Folks at home, also predict who you think came up with keep blasting. I'll give you a clue. They're on every episode of Bullet Time. So just go with that. The Bullet Time podcast is made possible by Eric Hamilton Schneider, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/hot cider. That's HOTCYDER. A special thanks to Max Coburn for the Bullet Time theme tune.